Hi, welcome to the Charlie Paparelli Show. I am Charlie Paparelli. And I have talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs over the years, and they have taught me how they build great companies from scratch and how they build them into great values that really serve their markets in a very positive way. Today, I have a very special guest and my friend Bird Blitch. But if you want, just for a second, but if you don't want to miss one of these episodes, I ask you to subscribe at paparelli.com. Simply submit your email address, and not only will you be alerted to when we have one of these great interviews with one of these great entrepreneurs like Bird, but also you'll get, as a bonus, you get my Tuesday blog that goes out. That's a little more interpersonal. It might help you as an entrepreneur. But my guest, as I said today, is Bird Blitch. Bird is the founder and CEO of PatientCo. He is now the Chief Innovation Officer right now at Waystar Health. They are a developer of medical claims management and patient payment software. The Bird has built PatientCo from scratch. I watched him do it. And he did it in the patient payment software space, which was a new space even for him. And healthcare was a new space for him. Bird, his leadership team, and his investors sold to Waystar most recently for over $450 million. That's almost $500 million. I first met Bird at the ATDC. He was the tallest entrepreneur at the ATDC. That's the Advanced Technology Development Center. And the most likely to succeed, I think he's 6'7". It doesn't show that on the in the screen, but you need to know that. He's a big presence. You know, when I got to know Bird better, he shared a story to me when he was running for class president at Georgia Tech.
Goodness.
And he said, I think I'm going to get this slogan right, but the slogan was, if you're not getting what you want, why not give them the bird? Okay. If I got that wrong, I'm sure he'll correct me when he comes on. Today, we'll meet one of Atlanta's most gifted second-generation technology entrepreneurs. I believe he's going to bring a huge influence in the continued growth of our Atlanta tech community. I have so much faith in Bird and see the power that he has as with his brains and his networking, relationship-wise, he's second to none. Today's topic is pursuing the dream by nailing the big problem, which we all have to do to be successful as entrepreneurs. So welcome, Bird, and thanks for sharing with me and for my entrepreneur audience.
Man, that is a great introduction. Thank you, Charlie. I have known you for a long time, and you've been a true friend, and been along this journey ever since the beginning. That's true. And by the way, the slogan was,
what was it?
When life at tech is a blitch, give them the bird. That's what it was.
Life
and as you kindly remind me, I think you're like, Bird, what's the outcome? I said, I lost the election. It could have been because of marketing. So, yeah.
But I'm sure that by just running like that, you didn't lose your brand. You're probably pretty famous.
I don't know about that. So.
Oh, I know about that. I'm sure that that's true. Do you remember where we met?
Well, I remember the journey. Certainly, the journey was in Grace at Work. Which was a Bible study in the ATDC. I believe it was Tuesday mornings at 7 a.m. And, I think I always got in there about 7:05. But I don't exactly remember where we met.
You know, it's funny when you talk about that Grace at Work, I think about some of the entrepreneurs that are there that have done quite well, you being one of them. And what was really interesting is that I pull the stories that stick with me are those stories like you running for class president, or stories like another friend of mine, Wells Burke, whom you know, who's doing quite well also, building a services company now, had a couple of exits. But Wells, I remember him coming in late all of a sudden. I'm like, what's up? And he goes, oh, well, I got a dog, and the dog has to be walked in the morning. So just to remember these stories, It's funny. It's not the business stories, but the personal stories.
That group, though, I mean, you look back at that, that was kind of a who's who in technology right now. And I don't think you were kind of nurturing babies at the time yourself.
Yeah, I didn't know. Kyle
We had
Porter
Sig
was
in
in
there.
that.
We had Sig in there. Now, that was also Sig was no Sig was the opposite. He was the grandfather.
Yeah, I remember when we were starting that, or when I was proposing to start that study. I still remember asking Sig Mosley to meet with me because I wasn't sure if he would come. And we met at the Barnes and Noble on 41 in the little coffee shop there. And I asked him, I said, I'm going to start this Bible study. And I'm telling you, Sig, if you show up, everybody will show up. And he said, without a second's hesitation, oh, yeah, I'll go. And it made a big difference.
He was there every week.
It is funny is there's a fellow named Matt Stevens, whom you probably know too, who was the president of High Tech Ministries and now just he had a successful exit just recently. He made a comment. He said that people go to the things that we go to because of the people that are at the things we go to. In other words, that's what we look for. Yeah. We're looking for that sense of community. So that was a pretty cool study, the way that all worked out. I really was pleased with that. Another guy that was in there was Mike Dickerson. Remember him?
Yep.
Yeah, he was there. And I'm going to be talking to him later this week.
He's a great CEO. He's backed by the same private equity group that backed PatientCo. So I would see him. Our private equity group, Excel KKR, would bring us together, the CEOs once a year. And I'd get to see Mike, and he is fast and furious. I mean, he's always working that phone, and then he'd go in. He's working hard as can be. That's what I remember. No matter what stage of the business you get to, you're still working hard.
Yeah, he's a great executor, but he's great for ideas. There's no doubt about it. But let's get to PatientCo a little bit. There were a lot of potential exits along the way for PatientCo. I know when I deal with entrepreneurs, with these investments that I make. Once you build something that really seems to be real, the calls start coming in, right, from the VCs or the private equity guys, and they're all like, yeah, we can take you out, or we can give you some liquidity or whatever. Why did you decide on first of all, how did you pass on all those things? How did you know that it wasn't the time?
So again, for the listeners here, this is not like Charlie did not submit a list of questions and say, here's where I'm going to go down. So I don't have these answers kind of thought through. But, if I sit here today and I look back on some of that, I'd first say that those are really tough decisions to pass up someone when they are interested in buying the business. I got to probably say there's a little bit of or a lot of God in that helps, gives you the right intuition on the journey and the path, because it's not always going to be the obvious answer is never there, right? And one thing David Cummings said one time was decisions get easy if they're reversible. So if you can make a decision that's reversible, then don't worry about, making a fast decision.
That's a great insight.
And on many of these things, once I got through them a little bit, I said, if this company's really interested in us, then I can say no and keep our heads down and keep growing. And then at some point I could call them back. But the truth was, Ken Manning, who is a longtime board member and then eventual chair. And for those of people who don't know Ken Manning in town, he is we could talk about him for an hour. He is an incredible entrepreneur, and like you, an incredible supporter of entrepreneurs. And PatientCo is just lucky to have him intersect with our path and our journey. But he kept saying, Bird, just you don't answer that phone, and you tell them your head's down, focused on growing the business, and because that's the right answer until it's not. And every day the market, this was a big market. We had really good talent in the business. And of course, you're finding your own way as a business to find the right product market fit with the right management team, the right type of customers at the right time. And once you hit that, man, there's a window of opportunity. You just want to keep rowing as fast as possible, because
what about you talk about Ken Manning, you talk about you and you gaining peace with, God giving you some sort of a sense of peace about whatever people were offering, along the way. What about your investors? How did the investors, because how much money did you raise?
Well, so we kind of bootstrapped it to $1 million. And then from there, we raised three and a half million from in a Series A round from Sandbox Industries, which works in conjunction with the Blue Cross Blue Shield Venture Fund.
But
and they're out of
you
Chicago.
actually skipped right over angel investing.
Yeah.
You went
we
right
did.
to a Series A. That was cool.
Well, so to back up from that, I had a real strong belief that if the customer, there's 3 rules. One, are you solving a problem? And kind of, and if you're solving a problem, you want to make sure, great software delivers value. So how do you know you deliver that value? With number 2, people are going to write you a check. And then number 3, you want that check to be in such a way that whatever they write you the amount for, you can reinvest in your growth. And of course, we had low overhead. I mean, we were basically paying nothing.
Give me those 3 again. You went past them so quick, but they're so valuable. You're solving a real problem.
Solving a real problem.
Yeah.
Can you actually? I mean, there's tons of problems. I tell people all the time. Say they're trying to in search of an idea. I go, you got to be in search of a problem.
There you go.
Right. Go around with your black book.
100% in that. Okay.
Go around with your black book and just write down every problem. You could be driving to work and say, my brakes squeak. That's a problem. Write it down because it can lead to something else.
Yeah.
There's tons of things that are problems every single day. And they bypass us because we aren't in the moment focused on identifying that problem. That's number 1. Then number 2 is the opportunity to take that problem and will someone pay you money to solve that problem? Right? Will people pay you money to solve that problem? Now, most people forget the third. And it's the first and the second,
just
but
dig
really
a little
the
dig
third.
deeper. Before you get to the third, dig a little dig deeper on that pay you the money. I mean, because there are a lot of problems. And there's a lot of problems that we seem to deal with in life that we just live with them. We don't pay people to solve the problem because it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. So I would say at PatientCo, just to put context to that, we did not build our first product until someone wrote us a check before we laid one line of code into the MVP.
Come on. How did you do that? How did you do that? Really?
No, I mean
you're like, it's you and a developer, and you're saying like, yeah, you got to pay us up front.
And let me go back to one other thing on the introduction. I had a wonderful co-founder in this business. His name's Joshua Silver. And he was a junior in college at Georgia Tech. And so my first company was a company called BroadSource.
And we're going to get to that.
And I co-founded that with Andy Monin, who then went on and did VendorMate. It was a huge success. But in that phase, I was running eventually business development. And we had a partner, and he said, I've got this neighbor next door, and his child is at Georgia Tech. His son, her son is at Georgia Tech. You all just have to meet. And so I went and met with Joshua. Go ahead.
That's how you met him? Through the neighbor?
Through his mother's neighbor. And he knew I say child, he knew the kid was at Georgia Tech. And I'm a Georgia Tech graduate. And I was 25 or 26 or maybe a little bit older.
Yeah.
Maybe I was more like 30 at the time. But he said, you guys have to meet. So we went to lunch. And Joshua said, man, my best friends in the world from high school are killing it over in Athens at the University of Georgia. And I said, now he disagrees with this version of the story, but I said, what are they doing? He goes, they are selling T-shirts over there, custom made T-shirts, and selling them like hotcakes. And he goes, I think I can make a lot of money doing that. And I was like, now hold on a second. You're at Georgia Tech, right? You're a presidential scholar in the College of Computing. Let's back into that, because let me tell you and I started to explain to him my journey, my story, and there's a long story that gets to healthcare, and then even how we got to that first.
So your first job was to give him a bigger vision.
I don't know that he would agree with that, but we do laugh at that story. There is a lot of the version of what I told is the truth. I've never backed off of that. Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
I was, one of the things I was going to get into that too, and we got to jump back into PatientCo in a minute, but it is really, I'm seeing more and more of this, that it's not the technology guys that they're sort of idea guys. All right. And some of them are problem facing. In other words, like you said, I need to write down the problems. I need to solve a problem. I don't need to come up with an idea that's in search of a
Right.
market. I need to find a
Right.
market that has a problem.
Yep.
And the technology guys they're not equipped for that. You, on the other hand, I see a lot of people like you that are more business people that are out in the markets, okay, but don't have the technical skills to build a product. There's more of those people around, and they see the problems, and then they get stuck. They can't find the guy. They can't find, their Joshua Silver, who's their partner to make that, to solve the problem, with software.
Yeah. And it's this viewpoint, there's this magical guy out there or girl that can write code, and that the leader can take. I do think that's a tough one to unpack, but I think a good idea and good people will attract other good people, and there are ways in Atlanta, especially, is so enriched with people like you that generously open up their network. And a lot of people tell me, Charlie, I'm good at networking. Okay, you kind of even open up with that as a reference. Let me tell you a secret. I really don't like it. Okay, I really would rather just be working in my office, reading a white paper, or maybe having a one-on-one with someone, asking them a lot of questions. One thing I've learned from you is you're great at asking people questions, even to the point they may be a little uncomfortable. You can come up and touch the edge, right, of uncomfortableness, but not to go through it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing for entrepreneurs to take away, because you're trying to get this kernel of truth out. So, and expose a problem with a potential solution and someone who would pay money for that solution. To David
Look
Cummings.
what you've done, though. When you talked about attracting Joshua, you said, I don't really network. But you are, let's put it a different way, is you're a friendly guy. You do know your next door neighbor. You see, there's a lot of people who don't know their next door neighbor ever. All right. But you talk to everybody. You enjoy people. Yeah. And this is interesting that you say, well, where's the best way to get my co-founder, which is really hard. I have investors that go to a guy like you, Bird, that's an entrepreneur, found a real problem, and says, you need to find yourself a technology co-founder and we'll invest in the business. Well, now it's a rush to marriage.
Yeah.
Right? Now you find a wife, and once you find a wife, in the next 10 days, we'll invest in that family. And you go like, find a wife in 10 days that I got to be married to for how long?
Well, I do think it's about relationships, and maybe that comes down to the networking piece. Again, I don't like networking because they're kind of these short, hey, how are you? Great. And then I envision you're at a cocktail party, you're just circulating around the room. And so you don't get to spend any time with one person in the moment, really understanding.
I think networking gets a bad rap. Networking isn't, see, that's what people think networking is.
Yeah.
But what I see networking as, and I was talking to another, I can't remember his name, VC there at ATDC, and he didn't even realize this. But what he did is he joined organizations and volunteered his time in those organizations. It could be a simple thing like we had, which was a Grace at Work group. And that's where you build relationship, as opposed to shake a hand, give a card, which is not networking, not in my book.
I believe this. You have to give to get.
There you go.
Right? You got to give to get. You can only do that if you take the time to build a relationship. It doesn't mean that it transcends time, and they're going to be front row when you get married at your wedding or something like that. But it does mean that you take the time to help deliver something of need or value to them, and you might hope in return that you get something back. Now, how does that work for me? I'll probably die of an early age or have many pacemakers because I've got, I ate a lot of breakfast. Okay. I took a lot of people to breakfast, a lot of eggs and cheese, and these arteries are going to get clogged at some OK Cafe. There ought to be some sort of a painting back there where they have me hanging, because I did take a lot of people to breakfast. And what you do there is, here's the key. When you get to the end of the breakfast, most of the times those things turn out to be a little bit of a dead end. Maybe 1 out of 4 you get, oh, wow, there's a really hope for something more. But on the other 2 or 3 that are a dead end, that's okay. Just say, do you have anybody else that you could introduce me to that might be interested in this problem that I'm solving for? Now, that's great because you've given to someone. Now they can go back and take their network and make an introduction. And it's kind of like a pyramid scheme, but it keeps going, see? And before you know it, you're starting to collect more and more data. And I'm a big believer, if you collect enough data, the data will almost always kind of point you in the right direction. You'll see pattern recognition. And you got to trust the data, but you got to get the data out on the table. And that takes time. And the time is exposed through your network, however you do it.
It's interesting you say that. One of the things I'm an investor in that Tech Square Ventures with Blake.
Yeah.
And he had an investor meeting or LP meeting, I guess it would be called.
I've been hearing about that around town. I hear it went really well. Like there were lots of learnings coming out of that.
It was great. He put up these entrepreneurs, right, that he had invested in. They're all great men and women. They did a phenomenal job in presenting, and they kept it short, to the point, meaningful. They weren't pitching for money. They were just pitching give information about where they are in their companies, their progress. Mm-hmm. They ended every pitch with, here's how you can help us.
Yeah.
And they had a list of the kind of people they were looking for, or companies they were looking for connections. And I was so impressed by that simple ask that you're saying you did at the end of a breakfast, because that's what I call intentional networking. I get with each question and each person I meet, I get closer and closer to the exact right people that I need to be successful with.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then you have to use discernment and use your best intuition as to how to get close to that right person. But you're in pursuit of knowledge, and you're in pursuit of good knowledge too, right? There's 2 types of knowledge. There's 2 types of advice. So you gotta trust your own intuition and follow your gut on some of those things. But you got to get to the kernel of truth, and then once you crack that open, it's very revealing. And then you're empowered. You got to know the other thing. You are fired up. You are ready to go because you really are passionate. And that's what I love about entrepreneurs is once they get there, they have this conviction, right, that they can go climb the mountain and solve for this problem. And who doesn't want to get behind that, especially other entrepreneurs? Look what you've done.
A lot of people do networking, and it's sort of like, well, I'm a really good guy and I know business and I'm pretty good in technology. Help me out. It's so vague that you sit there and go, look, I tell people, I don't want to think that hard that I have to figure out how to help you. You came to those breakfasts knowing what you were looking for. You were very, very focused. And once you had that conversation with them, that ask, when it finally came, you got a really good answer. You either got a no, which says, great, this guy really can help, or a yes, which moves you closer to something.
And by the way, no's are a great answer.
Yeah,
okay? They are a great answer because in the world of entrepreneurship, we are focused. Time is our worst enemy. And, I
would say time is your constant enemy.
It's all in every aspect of life.
You're right.
It's the one thing you can't stop. And markets change. So you got to get after it to get insert yourself in the market to at least be in the game.
Right.
Okay. Because whatever you come up with is going to it's going to change. But if you're in the game, you can start continuing to ask these questions to your customers. That's the biggest difference. Who are paying you money? And because they're paying money, they're going to give you their opinion. And sometimes it's good and bad. Sometimes the best opinions are the ones that are bad. You learn so much from that. But just back to your point a second ago, the worst answer is this, right? Well, I don't know. Let me think about it. Or let me get back to it because
that's the worst answer. You just said, let me think about it. Or if a guy's looking for a job, let me have your resume and I'll give it some thought. And I'm like, that means they have no idea. You'll never hear from them again. Okay.
And they're too nice to tell you that.
Well, I think that the problem, though, has to come back to us on the other side of the table saying, if I need to think about it rather than a yes or a no, that means I don't get what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So whose
And
fault
people
is that?
sometimes don't want to be seen as not getting what you're talking about, or, they don't want the entrepreneur to say, you didn't get it. And, again, life is too short. So, and even to your comment around the job seeker, if I were to give the listeners an example of what I'm talking about, if you give me an example, I start to understand really well what you're talking about sometimes. So here's an example. If someone comes to me and says, can you help me around this job search? Sure, I'd love to. But there's 10,000 places I could go with your resume for the job search. Come to me and say, here is my background, what I'm strong at. Here is 10 companies that I've identified that I'm in hot pursuit of. Do you know anybody in these companies or in these particular departments? I see on LinkedIn you have this connection here and this one here. They've already done their homework, so it makes it's easy to circle 1, 2, 3, 4, and prioritize that. Say, let's get after these first two first. They have the best chance of working for you. These next two we'll go after in 2 weeks. That's how you make it easy for people to do you favors.
That's excellent advice. Excellent advice. Now take that advice and then tell me, well, before I get to this, there's somebody to ask you, well, I can do this since we're on this thread, is how did you use that in those breakfasts? How did you choose who to invite to breakfast? And then what stage were you at with the company or the problem? What were you asking for? Or what information or data were you looking for in order to start building out this pattern recognition you talked about?
Boy, okay, so that's taking me back some years. But, well, first of all.
How long ago was it that you started PatientCo?
Well, 2009.
Woo, okay.
Yeah, but
By the way, that was the year of the recession. The Great Recession, wasn't it?
Which is the best time to start a business.
There you go. Okay.
It's the best time. We should answer that question later. That's a whole nother chapter. But, I want to add that now I'm going to come around to say I like networking because it's your one source. Like, if you're networking, you're getting outside of your comfort zone. And the only way you solve important problems is to go talk to people who have wonderful, rich experiences and listen.
Yeah.
And listen. Now, who did I don't know.
So how do you choose
how
the people?
chose.
That's the question, right?
What's that?
How do you choose the people you're going to meet with?
I did have a little bit of a philosophy that made it harder on me, but I always thought the busiest people who were the hardest to get a hold of were the best because they had the most experiences and they could tell me something in 30 minutes that someone else might not be able to tell me in an hour and a half. So I did, and what always helps you get to someone, especially if you don't know, is you ask someone a favor.
Why did you think that? That's a really great statement.
Well,
there's some level of efficiency and on-point sort of advice, right, from people who are really busy. It's funny that you came to that conclusion.
Well, if you're busy, let's just go back to any old job at work. The people who sometimes are the busiest, there's two types. There's people who are who like to just be busy, and maybe they're busy but not getting a lot of stuff done, so they're inefficient. But if you kind of see something that you're attracted to in someone and they're busy, it's probably because they do good work, and then others come to them and say, "Can you help me with this and help me with that?" Before you know it, their plate is, overfloweth. And so they are busy because they're smart, hardworking, considerate, and they get problems brought to them.
Yeah.
And so therefore they have more, if they're in the submarine and they stick up their periscope and looking around, their 360-degree view is going to be different than others, or others who only have a 180-degree view. So you're getting a different perspective.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then so we said that there were three things that you said you have to identify a real problem. People have to be willing to pay you to solve the problem. And what was the third thing that you mentioned?
Then, and this is what often people forget, they get the first two, great, I got a check. They got to pay you enough to solve the problem that you can reinvest back into your business to grow it. Now, so many times we mistake that capital coming into the business and substitute it with investment dollars, which is okay if eventually you can get to a place that you can accomplish number 3. Great companies don't need investment dollars. Eventually, sometimes, there are great companies like MailChimp that never had a dollar of outside investment. That's an amazing one to me. Curaspan raised Ken Manning's company. That was in Boston, so no one knows much about that. They raised like a tiny amount of money. Now, typically, it's going to take you longer to go execute on that vision as opposed to getting more capital and getting market share. But you still have a path at some point. You got to make money. My dad used to always say this. People forget the most important thing in business is you got to, I remember asking him one time, this was probably 2008, United Airlines filed for bankruptcy. And I said, Dad, how could a big airline like that file for bankruptcy? And he goes, it's easy. They had more going out the door in checks than they had coming in.
Right. And that is, and you bring up an excellent point, especially in this environment where it appears as though money is aplenty, right? You want to go raise money, it's all out there. But you do have to have a business that is actually that can promise profitability, right? Because if I'm profitable, I'm sustainable. But to say, oh, well, I have revenue coming in, I can't prove out a profitable model, I make it up with investment. Where am I when it's all said and done? I can't live on investment dollars for the rest of my life.
And by the way, you can still do that. And there's lots of successful stories around that. But the investor is going, and rightly so, the investor is going to gain that out. I mean, you may get this high valuation, but there's going to be structure in the way that deal is crafted to make sure the downside risk of the investor is protected. And if that downside risk is protected, then the person who really is going to feel the pain of that is the entrepreneur eventually, right? Because it's a scale. It's like all things have to be weighted out even at some point. There is a day where all this comes to light.
And of course, with entrepreneurs, there's that lack of experience in a lot of cases, which gives them lack of perspective. Right? Yeah. That it's, hey, I'm the entrepreneur. I've got all the, I had one entrepreneur make a comment and said, I was working with the guy, in fact, and this is where I met Sig, and he made a comment. I never forgot it. This is what's this, 30 years ago. He said, a dollar's just a dollar until an investor gives it to me. And that level of arrogance, really bothered me because he never understood even how to build a company or appreciated it or how to build, a profitable enterprise. All right.
Yeah.
And so, but there's this like, I'm the entrepreneur, I'm the idea guy, I could do this. And it was disturbing. And,
and that's something that really drove me is look, we all have to be authentic to who we are. Because at some point, if you're not who you are, this is a hard enough business, then you'll run out of steam. I believe that. So, there's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there who are not humble, and who believe that they are greater than they probably are because of the success that they've had. I mean, I'll call out one that everyone puts on a pedestal, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
People love Steve. I admire Steve Jobs. But I don't it's hard for me to say I don't respect Steve Jobs, but I don't want to be Steve Jobs.
No, I see that your values and his values are very different, but he was he was authentic to who he was, but
he was
sometimes
authentic.
You look at it and you go like, but I wouldn't want to be in his skin.
No.
Yeah.
And I think that's a decision too, that reflects how you want to build the business.
What does it mean for you to when was your authenticity challenged? Do you remember times in this in the early or mid stages in building the company when it was like, am I this is one of those where you're afraid to ask Anna, your wife, because she knows you so well, and tell her, hey, look, I'm thinking about doing this. And your wife says, you can't do that. That's just not who you are, Did you have did you have some of those things happen to you?
I think there's probably lots of them, but my brother gave me this thing. I remember this is not answering your question, But when I was in high school, I think we've all gone through high school. It's kind of weird years, and you're uncomfortable with who you
You're
are.
trying to figure out who you are, right?
You're trying to figure out a lot of stuff. And he came and he brought me this kind of like 2x4 that he had carved out, and he said, "I'm just going to put this above your door when you go out every morning." And it said, "Be yourself." And I was like,
this?
God, get out of my room. It's like, okay.
Who gave you this?
I was in high school.
But who gave it to you? Who said be yourself?
My brother.
Your
big
brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
He somehow brought that home. Now I have no idea. I do remember the moment a little bit. I don't remember the whole scenario why he did that. I need to ask him probably, but
why did it bother? Why do you go like, oh God, especially putting it over the door? That's about eye level for you. Okay.
That's right. Right. Yeah. Well, in high school, you don't want anybody telling you what to do, right? You're like, my parents are, odd people. I just want to be as far away from them as possible. And yet, so little. It's a lot like entrepreneurship. Sometimes you think you know so much. And the thing about entrepreneurship, which is similar to being an adolescent, if you're honest about it, is you get humbled 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
And gosh, how many times do you continue to fail along the journey there? And it's like, our CEO at Waystar, he is a great guy. I hope you get to meet him. And his name is Matt Hawkins. And he just sent out an email to a group, leadership group last night around Derek Jeter, that he read an article around, Derek Jeter. And he was just saying, the two things I took away from that is, always got to find a way to keep pushing forward. I'll send this to you. It's just about, a letter that Derek Jeter wrote to his younger self after he retired. Okay. And, I read it, and it just said, you got to find a way to keep pushing forward, never quit. That was one. I think the other one is the memories, right? The journey along the way are what counts, not always the end result. He goes, hey, I never forget World Series #1 and #2 and #3 and #4 and how many ever he had. But he talks about the journey along the way, and a lot of the hard times are what he actually remembers most.
Yeah, it is interesting. I can agree with that. Here I am at 68 now. It's really not the achievements that really are the memories. It's the walking together, on the way to those things. It's having those common goals that you're trying to achieve. That's where the richness of life is. It's not in, getting to the top of the mountain. And you're a mountain climber. Or hiker, it's really the walk to get there. Once you get to the top, it's like, okay, we're here, it's really pretty. And then you're walking down again, right?
You take a picture, I guess. Yeah. And, but you can only stay at the top for like 10 seconds because they got to get you off the mountain. Right. And so you're always remembering all the different views and stops along the way up. I think that's a good.
But how do you remember that in the midst of the battle, that this is where the richness is?
Well, I think.
That's a very philosophical look back comment.
Sure.
But, when you sit there and you go, Bird, you were sitting here, you thought you had the problem solved, and the customer said, look, I paid you. This isn't what I paid you for.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of richness in that moment.
And I'm not going to renew. And look, I can't tell you how many, every time you get here, I've learned. Okay, you're like, boy, we're right here. I'll go home and tell Anna. I'll say, well, I know tomorrow's going to be a crappy day because just as soon as you get here, you're going to be brought right back to reality here. It could be someone you're recruiting decides not to join. It could be someone that was on your team surprisingly leaves you. That is a heartbreaker sometimes.
That's devastating.
That is devastating. It could be a customer says something bad to a prospect. It could be a key prospect chooses your rival, right? And they made a bad decision. It could be that you said something incorrectly in a board meeting to one of your investors.
Yeah.
You didn't answer the question the right way. It could be you made a wrong decision. It could be you're in front of the company and you didn't share something, or you shared something in the wrong way, or you said something in the wrong way. That's one of the harder things. Also, people will hang on a founder or CEO's words. You have to be yourself, and yet
I always found that to be terribly unfair. Okay.
Yeah.
That you said something and somebody takes it out of context, or they take it very personally, which you didn't mean it to be that way. And there's just no way of getting out of it. Just no way. It's just like, I heard him. He said that. You know, it's
I
like,
know.
oh, come
And
on.
the bigger the
I said a
company,
lot of things. You know, let's kind of bring it's let's look at the data pattern. Let's not just look at one set of data. You know.
yeah. Or I tell you what used to kill me is a bad review on Glassdoor. You're like, oh man, because that's going to be out there for the whole world to see, and it doesn't go away.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have to live in that kind of social environment that you guys had to grow up in. It's just incredible. Well,
Yeah.
I had a question, though. A lot of what we're talking about, all those circumstances that you talked about, these bad things that can happen,
And
right?
can I
that
interrupt
ratchets
you
your
one
back.
second before you go there? Like,
Yeah.
you stack them up; they're not fun either. People look at entrepreneurship. Now everyone's going to hang up after this video and say, "Well, I don't want to start a company," but it's not fun. You're battling, right? And every year at PatientCo, it get to be like Christmas. Let's say, Anna, next year is going to be a lot better. We're gonna hit this plateau, and I feel like I'm going to be a more present, and I'll spend less time, on the business all the time. And we get to like April, she used to be like, "Well, I thought you said this was going to be an easier year." And I'd look back, I'd say, "Well, this is a hard year, but thank God this year isn't last year. Last year, I can't believe we made it through." And so one of my biggest lessons is people talk about this great growth. I think so many times it's about surviving to get to the next phase, Just like look at every team that wins the NCAA basketball tournament. There are plays in each game that they survived, dove to find a loose ball, and it turned into a layup. They won by 2 points. But no one ever sees that, right? They see the three-pointer with 30 seconds left that won the game. And there's all these things, and you watch the tape that enabled success to hit the next customer and hit product market fit. And those are just battling out days, but they make you tougher. And then you get stronger, and then you build more confidence, and then you have conviction. You have conviction. And suddenly you are you got to stay humble, or else you'll get humbled, but you
what you
really
said
start
is
to believe
survive.
that what we're building as a team is something special.
But you said survive
And advance.
to get to the next stage, right?
Yep.
I was watching. It's funny the way you bring this up. One of the things that hit me is there was this guy that was getting operated on, and he died on the operating table. And it was one of those, what did I see? This afterlife kind of a thing, which I don't know that I believe or not. But he did say some things that were interesting to me that I think is appropriate here. He said he was in a field and there was this person next to him. He didn't know who it was. Of course, as Christians, I would say, well, that was Jesus that was standing next to him. But he said, I'm in this field and I was able to look as far left as I wanted to, or as far right as I wanted to. But I wasn't able to look very far forward because it was cloudy. Okay.
Yeah.
And he said, but I wasn't allowed to turn around and look back.
Yeah.
And I say, and what you're saying is interesting. We sort of sit here and say the very long-term vision doesn't really keep you. You have to be focused on what you have now. So as you said, I can advance. Okay. And,
let me just tell you one of my favorite quotes, and I'm looking it up just to read it correctly.
Yeah.
At sunrise, everything is luminous, but not clear. Yeah. Now that's by Norman MacLean, and A River Runs Through It. A great movie about fly fishing. And if you ever read the book, it's a short story, but he is an incredible writer.
Yeah.
A fly fishing story out of Montana. But at sunrise, everything is luminous, but clear. So it's like what you're saying. And you got to have this. Here's an enormous thing as an entrepreneur. You got to provide this vision that people can get a hold of. And I did have a vision, but it is the hardest thing to do in the world because you want it to be clear, not luminous, right? You want it to be clear.
Yeah.
And yet that's
you're talking about the vision.
Talking about the vision.
Not only clear, but it has to be meaningful To
and
me,
inspiring.
right? I mean,
And
you're
then you can
communicating
use
it
that
to me, and
build,
I go, what do I care?
yeah. And then you got to go to your company and build goals out of that, right? And out of this vision, and then create a KPI maybe around that. And you build out, yearly goals. And then out of that comes down to all sorts of things. But goal building is important too. I do think, look, we
Seems to me, though,
survived
a
and
meaningful
advanced, but we
vision.
did
Let's
hit
go
our
back to the
goals.
vision. A meaningful
Yeah.
vision seems to have is focused on the problem. As I think back on visions, like what was your vision for PatientCo?
Well, it was kind of simple. I mean, if you go back to 2009, now this is taking us back a little ways.
Yeah.
2008, Obama was running for president, and he was a big promoter of the EMR, or the electronic medical record, which was, hey, if I go into the doctor on a Tuesday and they stick me and get take a blood sample, and that gets recorded, and I go home and then I get a little more sick and go back into the hospital on a Friday, why should they stick me again for that same blood sample? It was just recorded.
Yeah.
And that's cost that goes into the system that drives up healthcare costs for everybody, because we're doing redundant tests and procedures that we shouldn't do. If we had them all recorded in a database that was centralized and shared, that medical record, which is now electronic, not paper, it's hard to think about it back in that day, it's electronic, then all the doctors can start to collaborate together to get the patient better faster. And what I realized was, the story I love to tell was, going along the path, we were pretty much newlyweds. Anna was pregnant. We had 9 months to prepare for the birth of a baby and do all the clinical prepared type things you do by going to see the doctor. And there's 1,000 different things they tell you to do. Eat this and do that.
Yeah.
And so we were very focused on that. But the financial aspect of that journey was very confusing, especially when we left the hospital, we got home, and all these bills started coming. And I had no idea what all they were for. I mean, our child, Eleanor, she got this doctor for an ear check to check her hearing. But that doctor actually billed out of somewhere in the Northeast, so there was out of pocket. And my insurance covered that differently. And trying to investigate and understand that was very confusing. So I felt like the vision was, why can't we have a centralized financial record, right, where we all can work off and all see the same thing? And that turned into, more of a mission for us, that we believe that health systems deserve better than the status quo. We build financial engagement technology that inspires trust between providers and their patients.
So in other words, is you really make the whole healthcare delivery and billing understandable to patients, in effect, so that they pay sooner, right? I mean, that was a big part of it.
Well,
too.
that was the first thing. Like, my gosh, there's so many dollars that go uncollected. And why? There's some people that can't pay. Okay, we'll solve for that later, which we did, because there's an affordability crisis in America around healthcare. But so many people can pay and don't, because they don't understand it. They're confused. They don't trust. There's a point in everyone's healthcare journey where they might say no because they just don't. They throw their arms up. And I looked to Anna, and this is where I give her a lot of credit. I said, I know we have a newborn, we have car payments, and we got a mortgage. But give me a year, because we're not the only people that are faced with this problem. And based on my past experience at BroadSource, right? I'm still drinking from that coffee mug. See that? Yeah. That's an
Never
old
forget
coffee
the
mug.
first one. Great.
Based off that, I understood a lot about billing and payments, right? BroadSource was based on billing and payments in the telecom industry. 9 out of 16 times you receive a bill back then and it was incorrect, right? And so that's a big problem. Who knew that? Well, the only problem that's worse than a telecom bill is a healthcare bill.
Well, why did you, when you looked at this healthcare, like when you experienced this healthcare issue, I love what you're saying is walk around with a black book, you're telling the entrepreneurs, and write down all of the problems that you see, including squeaky brakes. Great example. So here you are firsthand seeing all these bills come in from the delivery of Eleanor, and you're saying, I don't know what to pay or not pay. I mean, I don't even understand where all these are coming from. Healthcare and that billing cycle, all that stuff is so complex.
Yeah.
What gave you the nerve to think that you could even put a dent in it or solve it in any way? Why didn't you look at it and go like, oh my God, this is such a mess, I can't go there? And you went on and just put it in your little black book, but then moved on to the next problem.
I think there's
Why did this grab you and say, Anna, I need a year?
yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think there's two things to unpack there. One,
Yeah.
maybe it goes back to that saying, be yourself. Okay. I believed in myself. Now that didn't mean that, but I believed in myself. Now, what did I believe in? I think I believed that if I failed, there was this world, thanks to people like you and a support network that I had, where I'm gonna call this. I felt like I had some unconditional love.
Okay.
That if I failed, I wasn't going to end up in the gutter on the side of the streets.
You would still
Okay?
have value, in other words, right?
I could go get a job. I would not, look, no one likes to fail, but I felt like I didn't know how successful I could be, but I felt like I could make sure I didn't fail. That's what I believed in.
So if that's a big one, because if I could put failure aside, then there should be no reason for me to move forward. The second one that I would ask, though, is I do have a wife and a child and a house and car payments. Okay.
Yep.
So there's that other piece that says, if I fail, I've got to take care of my family. So there are financial considerations here that are in fact real.
Yeah. Yeah. There are real financial considerations. And, I had
How do you get past that?
Well, so
you put a year on it. I mean, what was that? You had banked a year of.
Yeah, I'd saved up. Look, I'd been in my first company was BroadSource.
Yeah.
And it was backed by Nora Mosley and Harbert Ventures. And it wasn't, I would call that just good enough of a success where they didn't come in and shut it down. Like we were growing, but never going to be, a great exit. And I think if anything, those were tough times too. We had to go through the year 2008, which was just a brutal, year, the Great Recession. But I was able to come out of there with just a little bit of pocket money to be able to take most of that and put that into PatientCo.
But really what that amounted to was putting it into your family.
Oh, it did. I mean, I didn't take a salary for the first year.
Yeah.
Even the second year, I think it was $36,000. And, that was tough. I mean, I remember, I had a 10-year-old GMC Yukon. The housing payments were the biggest thing. Anna was teaching, so we kind of lived off her salary. Well, a teacher doesn't make much, but I did have a dual income salary, so that helped big time. And we just didn't travel much or do anything. When we did, we go see the grandparents, and you kind of stay for free and eat for free. So it wasn't luxurious living back then. Anna had an old car too. I could barely fit into it. But I do love those days. I do love some of those days. Those were some of the good old times as well. Working out of the basement of the house, doing all that sort of funny stuff.
Well, one of the things that you did too as an entrepreneur is you didn't become a credit card spender. In other words, you didn't put yourself into enormous debt. You put yourself in a situation where you did have some savings, and you did have a lifestyle that was moderate, comfortable, and somewhat sustainable, right?
Yeah.
In other words, you're not the guy that shows up and says, look, unless I'm making $350 a year, there's just no way I can cut it.
Yeah. I think I remember sitting down several times, you're getting to the heart of the matter here. You go through your budget, right? And you're looking at what you're spending money on. We didn't have, the taxes were the biggest thing. Quite frankly, the Fulton County property taxes were the hardest thing each year. And I remember somehow like a check would come in, or, I just all the time, it's amazing how God works. I'll be like, gosh, how do I get this big bill paid for? And somehow I would find a way. Those are the stories that are truly like buried deep down. I don't even know how I did that sometimes, but you find a way, beg, borrow, steal, and you live to see another day. And that's part of it.
Do you think that there's a good time? Like here you were, as you got married. How old were you when you got married to Anna?
Let's see. I think I was I should know this answer, and
you're
now
like
you've got me
30.
recording on TV.
Were
But
you like
I think
30?
I was. Hold on. I'll tell you, I'm 47 now, so I was 32.
Oh, 32, yeah. So you had 10 years, your 20s, you had established experience, you established relationship and network. You
Yeah,
understood, so you understood, like you were saying, billing and payments and all, even though it was in telecom, which is what Broadsauce was about.
yep.
And you became a business person. You understood how business worked. Is So when you get to your 30s now, my question is there a, if we look at bell-shaped curves, okay, is there a sweet spot for starting a company,
Well,
age-wise and family-wise, okay? Because,
he,
like versus Eleanor, instead of being a newborn, Eleanor is 17. You follow me? I mean, it's a different situation.
it's totally different. I got football practice now. I got baseball practice,
Yeah.
games. You want to be there for that. Um, you're trying to find time, on the weekends to go, went biking with my kids this weekend. I mean, there's a whole different aspect to that. But I think regardless, a lot of it is I have a wonderful supporting family, and so Anna was she was 100% a part of every part of the journey, even though she wasn't in the office with me every day. We were a complete team. So that's one thing I feel very, very fortunate on is, I wasn't coming home on every Tuesday and she's like, can I see your Salesforce report?
Yeah.
How many new prospects do you have? It wasn't that. And it doesn't mean that doesn't work in some relationships either. But for me, it was, I could get away from the hard grind. And,
But look
I
at
had
the
to
other
support
side
that.
of this from her side is she has to, in a lot of cases, blindly
Blindly.
blindly trust and respect, right? If you get that every time you come home, somebody is like, well, you didn't make the progress you said you did. I knew this wouldn't work. I can't imagine
Oh,
why we're doing this. Why are we suffering like this? The guy next door, he's a doctor. Look how much money he's making, and they live a good life. You could make
and
that
he's
kind of
home at
money.
6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and you leave earlier than he does, or you leave earlier than she does. There's all of that.
But
But I think also,
that's what a spouse can do. They can hammer you into submission because as soon as you leave the house and you start trying to work on your company, everything you do is hammering you into submission
and
as
I've
an
got one
entrepreneur.
point to make in a second, but that is such an incredible one you're on right now. Is if I take from that, right, how Anna was to me, how it's so easy for us to be hammering other people,
Yeah.
but in reality, if you are working, what I learned, one of my biggest lessons, if I learn along the way, that I learned along the way is, a real winner that reports to you, even in your one-on-ones, they really want to be successful. If they're a winner, they're going to bring their problems to you very transparently
Yeah.
and say, can we talk about this? You don't have to find them. You shouldn't have to find them. You should have a relationship first that you've built with them where it's a comfortable place to be transparent and vulnerable. That's what a great one-on-one is. And honestly, I come home. I learned this from Reggie. Okay, going through ambassadors with you. One of the best gifts he ever shared was on our sessions is come home, put your phone down, find your spouse, and go stand next to them and just talk about your day for 5 to 10 minutes and ask questions and just listen. That's the most important part
I
of your
think that
day.
he actually, he would coin these phrases. I think it was 5 feet for 5 minutes or something like that. So you've got to be in her space for
And
and then
I mean,
for 5 minutes,
I don't know why. If there's one
undevoted.
thing I
I mean,
took
you're
out of
really
ambassadors, it
focused
was
on
that. And that's, we talk about like relationships. That's the most important one for me to get that right. Now, outside of that,
I'll tell you a story. Just, you're going to go to that, and I don't want
yeah,
you to lose that thought. But there was a guy that I went to this thing on how to be a public speaker, and there was this pastor, and he made a comment about this. He said every evening I would come into my house and I would give my wife the finger. And it was a pastor, and I'm like, what is he talking about? And what he was talking about is he said I was always walking in on the phone and going like this to her. Okay.
yeah.
Like 1 minute, okay. And that image never left my mind, but that's what Reggie was talking about.
Well, but that also gave me confidence. and then I think, a big part of the journey was if you're concerned about what tomorrow looks like and putting food on the table for your family, man, nothing will bring you closer on your faith journey than that. And
how did that work for you? Do you remember times? Can you tell me a story of when you were like that you didn't maybe even tell Anna, but it was sort of on your mind, and you didn't want to burden her with it, so you carried it yourself?
Oh, I
How
think
did that
there's
come between you and God?
thousands.
How did that work?
I'm terrible about, we'd come home and at night she's like, what's the startup show that used to be on HBO that everyone watched? Silicon Valley, I think, and everyone loved it.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
It's like you watch one episode and they're like changing the name. The next episode, like the investors are stealing their idea and on. She was like, this is the funniest thing ever. I was like, I can't watch that because that's what I live that's a reality show to me.
It's funny about that. What's the other one that's on TV now with a Shark Tank?
Yeah.
I can't watch Shark Tank. I can't do it. And I couldn't watch Silicon Valley either because it was a reality TV for me. I look and I go, I really understand this so well. It breaks my heart to watch it.
And I'm like, I just need to watch a National Geographic show or something. And then those things always turn into like the wildebeest are crossing the river and the alligators are getting them. I'm like, I'm back to where I'm back. Like I'm trying to get out of this world. I'm the wildebeest.
Oh my God, I'm the wildebeest. Look at, they're all coming after me. I love that. That's everything in life is a metaphor for everything that we're doing, right?
But to get back to that whole faith thing, I mean, it's the peace that surpasses all understanding, right? You can't describe it until you've taken the time to invest in it.
But how long did it take you? How much of this, one of the things that we have as entrepreneurs is we have this ability to take on an enormous amount of responsibility, an enormous amount of problems, an enormous amount of emotion. And yet there is a breaking point. Was there? And that's when we go, oh God, it's just like the Israelites in Egypt. At some point, they were on their own going through the desert, and then they would scream out to God, "We don't have any water," save us.
There's a breaking point. It's like in
moments?
Shawshank Redemption. I think he says every man has his breaking point.
So what happened? Do you have one of those stories that you can remember?
I mean, there are lots of. I'll tell you one, but there's lots of different ones along. I mean, I always say, boy, you want to have one, story of a breaking point that just is like transformative.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I feel like if you're getting pushed, just like you said, and you're trying to change markets, and you're trying to build teams, which means you have to change people also, and you're trying to do all that together and meet these expectations, you get broken down all the time.
What would you say to an entrepreneur who says, I'm at that point now, what should I do, Bird?
I would say you don't go see a psychologist. Don't go do three things. Pick up a Bible and read the book of John. That's number one, I'd say.
Okay.
Number two, I'd say get in a men's group, because every time, for me, so it could be a group. I was able to join throughout it wasn't just one time, throughout the process, different groups, and those groups read and talk about the meaning and how that impacts their life. And the third one is carve out the time to pray. Those three things will bring you in as close alignment as you can: the fellowship, the one-on-one time, and then the reading. Those three things will bring peace that does settle a lot of things and gives you guidance in ways that I can't explain it. I really can't. I can't sit here. I can tell you a story as well. I can go through all that. I'm happy to, but I can't explain that.
I think what you do.
It's magical.
It is, and I think that those are three great pieces of advice that you're giving them. But the first one would read the book of John gives you an understanding of how much God loves you, which you talked about earlier, how important that was to you, that you knew you were loved and that you were capable, right?
Unconditional love.
Yeah.
Right. There's sometimes like, oh, I love someone that I work with because they're doing very well. And then when they're not, you don't love them as much. Right. I'm talking about unconditional love. Like I come home every day and of course I love to see my dog. My dog loves me no matter what. That's the sort of stuff that is to me is divine, right? You can't explain it. You can't put a mathematical formula around it. You can't create a company that replicates it. It is different for every single person. But the one thing you have to do is carve out the time to invest in that.
You know, I was in prayer today and actually praying for our conversation, praying for you and Anna and the kids there was a pastor that was speaking. They have these little kind of quotes from these pastors. And he talked about how Jesus, of everything that was recorded that Jesus said, 10% of what he said was quoting scripture. So even Jesus Christ, the Son of God, he lived scripture. Okay. And I think that we have to believe in something that's bigger than us, or we'll never find that peace. So I do think that scripture is the great way to start because that is God's word and it brings us closer to God.
It's so freeing. The odd thing, Charlie, is you feel like you're reading, you feel like you're getting boxed in. Oh, I mean, it's easy, right? We live in this world. We want to be free. We want to be entrepreneurs. We want to blossom. We want to go in the direction of which we best see fit. We want to follow what our intuition tells us to do. We want to look at the facts and try to, as I said earlier, see pattern recognition.
Yeah.
But, there is no path to the success. Like there are so many miracles along the way of PatientCo every single day. And some of those you asked me to talk about, that's what I'm hearing, but they're hard to explain. I mean, they really are because I guess, one time I did this and I need to get back into this. You take your black book around and also write down every time you see something that is unexplainable, or you might even call a miracle. Like a miracle isn't, in my mind, changing, water to wine.
Yeah.
Right. It's these little things like a check came in and I somehow paid my taxes back in 2009. And I don't know how that happened. And it's easy to say, oh, I worked for that. Or, boy, I'm glad I called to make sure that check got paid to the company 15 days earlier. So, whatever it may be. But there's lots of those. And in one of my men's group, one of the guys started doing that. And he was like, I just couldn't believe how many miracles are occurring around me every day that I never recognized until I started focusing on them because I wrote them down.
How do we, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's been writing, for quite a few years here, okay, I noticed that the articles that catch most people's eyes, including me, they catch my eyes, is here's the 5 ways to be successful. Here's the 3 ways to the best marriage. Here's the 2. We want a step-by-step or a process that's going to guarantee us success. Yet here's what you're saying is, I can give you some best practices as you did, like 1, about starting a company. 1, identify a real problem. 2, make sure they pay you. 3, make sure you can make money on it, right? And but now you're saying there's all these miracles that take place in the midst of the whole journey, which are sort of interwoven or even outside the process, that advice that you just gave. How do I, as an entrepreneur, tap into that? How do I, what you're saying is like your exit is partly a miracle, building a company is in fact a miracle. Okay.
Yeah. And anybody who says that it isn't is not being truthful and honest about that.
Huh. That's a harsh statement. What? That's a black and white. Why do you say that?
Because
we don't hear this talked about, Bird. Nobody mentions this kind of stuff.
So That's a good one. Why don't people talk about that? So is the question, why don't people talk about it? Or is the question like, why is that not a formula for success?
Well, I think that we're seeing that there's a lot of destiny involved in this. There's a lot of these perfect timing interactions, like the check coming in the mail to pay for the taxes, right? Whatever it might be, that client that when you just feel like I'll never get a new client and you literally are in a coffee shop and the guy buys from you on the spot.
Our biggest client at the time and for a long time was a company called Cone Health. And I remember we had someone in sales, and Dick went and put a LinkedIn post up about the success of another client. And this guy actually read it and called us. And it's not even like we had a hotline. I mean, I was sitting in the conference room and picked up the phone. This was before we still had phones in conference rooms. And I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, I put on mute. I'm like, this is Mike Sims. We kind of knew who he was. He was a known entity in the marketplace. And he was at the end of a sales cycle. And so, we worked and put these spreadsheets together and told him how our product was best. And at the end of the day, we went up there and presented everything else. And at the end of the day, so he chose the competitor. And I wrote him a long note. I remember I was able to arrange someone to drop off a bottle of wine to him in North Carolina.
Oh, how nice.
And then they called back 2 weeks later and said, we made the wrong decision. We're gonna get out of our contract on what we signed, and we're gonna go with PatientCo. And I look back at all those series. Now, that was the whole thing that brought us closer to this big company called Epic, because they were running off this software system. It brought us instant credibility. It brought us a bigger monthly recurring revenue that we could build off to other huge systems like that. And there's a lot of little miracles in there. I mean, first of all, someone just happened to uninstructed, Dick went and put a post on LinkedIn back when LinkedIn wasn't that popular. 2, this guy read it. It wasn't like he was following our company. It just happened to pop up in front of him. 3, he had initiative to find our number, picked up and dialed our 800 number and talk to the first person that could pick it up. 4, it was me, the CEO, sitting in a conference room working. 5, I recognized who he was. 6, we were all crowding around the speakerphone and started a sales cycle from there. 7, I just go 7, 8, 9, 10.
I think it's great. And then you lost the deal, nice. Yet you showed grace to the prospect by sending him a note and giving him a bottle of wine, which never I'm sure you didn't do that to a lot of deals that you lost. It just happened to be with that one. You must have hit a good relationship.
That's a true statement too. That's a true statement too. Why that one? Yeah. And I can look at all these things and I can say, I was smart enough. I had enough EQ to know to write that person a note. But really, right? When I stitch all that together, you just can't say it was just PatientCo. Yeah, we had the effort and we were prepared.
So what it is what it is I think maybe, this is my insight, is we can't put a miracle is a supernatural event. Okay. It's a supernatural intersecting with the natural world. Okay. To arrange these types of things, these 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 10 that you're talking about with this particular prospect, is we're not comfortable. We can't put the supernatural in a process. You can give me the 1, 2, 3, the problem, will they pay, and is it enough? Okay, in a process. You can't put the supernatural in a process. You just can't do it. So if I can't do it, I can't talk about it.
No. It's the hardest thing to explain in the world. Now, do I go to my company and say, boy, this was a miracle that we landed Cone?
Yeah.
No, I actually didn't do that. Now, look back, I didn't say this. We celebrated it. We put pine cones all over the office, all that silly stuff, and we said, boy, great job. Everyone did a great job. But I think, to a person, every morning would go home and say, man, we're really fortunate. We're very fortunate. And, by the way, you can call that good luck. That's what we call it in this world today. We say there's good luck. And then there's also.
That is what we call it. You're right.
That's what we call it.
Yeah.
And there's also bad luck. And you can get two forms of that. And then, but even on the good luck, why did it happen? You were able to execute on the bad luck. You had to fight through it, turn it into something good. And so, I just think, at some point down here in you, there is something called conviction that can come from experience. That can, right? It can come from unconditional love, right? You really believe. I mean, there's certain things that all come together. But at the end of the day, you're figuring it out. You're figuring out each and every day.
Our believing, what we believe in. If I just believe in me, all right, or my team and me, then yeah, we did all this, okay? But if I have a fundamental belief that there is a God and it's not me, then there's something bigger at play in all of this, right? I can't explain it, but there's something bigger at play. So it's that belief system that really, your fundamental belief system that sort of drives these conclusions that you have.
Drives is a good word. It powers you through the good days and the bad. Okay.
Yeah.
And I bring up, a lot here, fighting through the bad, because it's the truth. There are some great days being an entrepreneur. There are some great days when you learn something about a teammate, when you see a contract come in, when you do a product release, when you have a celebration as a company. There's a ton of things, right? To me, it's just like, it's less about that, but when someone turns in a really good proposal and works hard, like that's something that's just fun to watch when things are clicking. We used to have this thing at PatientCo, we call it in the zone. You got these in the zone moments. And I think that's how we in the secular world think about this. Man, I'm focused, I'm concentrated. Yeah. I know the problem. I can get 1 + 1 = 2. I did it. I was in the zone. I didn't get distracted. But a lot of times, this overused saying now, we're trying to produce in our world of technology, 1 + 1 = 3. To produce, 10, 20x times returns, all this, yada, yada,
and
yada.
1 + 1 needs to be 3. And we need to recognize it's a miracle if it becomes 3, right? Because
yeah.
But I have to get there. So how am I going to get there? Am I going to be the one that does it all? And
right.
You can't do that. I remember once the first time that with me is I got into angel investing, and I became and it was right after I came to Christ through sort of AA being a stepping stone, and then the high-tech prayer breakfast. But one of the things that I put in place is the kind of investments that I would make and the kind of people that I would be associated with. And I thought I had it figured out early on. And this one guy, I was down about 600,000 in this business. I had another 400,000 for the computer leases that were under my name. And this guy comes to me that I started the company around, or he started the company. I backed him. And he said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, what? I said, what? I said,
whole time. Yeah.
You don't want to do this anymore. And I'm thinking, if he quits and I have to shutter this company because I can't take this thing over. I don't know the market like he does and all. Yeah. I said, I'm going to have to find a job. Just plain and simple, I have to find a job. I went home that night, and I still remember me walking around my neighborhood screaming at God, saying, wow, I did everything you told me to do, and now this? How could you do this to me? And a week later, that guy came in and he said, look, I really didn't want to do it. So I talked to my contact at this public company that we're working for and working with. We're a consulting company. And they said, why don't we just buy you? And I said, oh, come on. And I wound up, I had 600,000 in it, and I wound up getting a 2.4 million out of it.
I mean, you can't explain it.
I can't explain it. If I told you what they paid for this company and what their revenue was, you'd say, no one would pay that amount of money. It was like a miracle. It was a miracle, and it's what kept me. It was the foundation for my angel investing career for the next 25 years. Couldn't have done it without that. A miracle. It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. Now, I think anyone who's listening is going to say, well, how do I find a miracle? I'm just going to walk down the street and lightning is going to strike me. But you have to put yourself in position to find a miracle.
Ah, now you're talking.
You got to put yourself in a position, right? I mean, I'm trying to think of another analogy. Like, yeah, I'm hungry, but I got to put myself in position to eat, to not be hungry. I mean, maybe that's not a
Well,
great
no,
analogy,
it's a
but
good example, but
right?
I would say it differently is that I'm letting everybody know that I'm looking for food, right? I'm
Yeah,
out there and that I don't
yeah,
have food now. I've had food, but I
yeah,
don't have food now. So anybody else can help me here. How can we? So in other words, you got to put yourself on the edge for a miracle to sort of happen. A miracle doesn't happen if you're in complete control of
right,
everything in your life.
right. Yeah, you're not in control of everything in your life. You
Right.
could have, you can go, anybody here listening can go to the doctor tomorrow and you can learn some very bad news about your health. And
I'm with you on that
everybody
one.
here knows that that can happen. Absolutely. You hope it doesn't. We all hope, it can happen. That's how not in control we are of things.
One question that came up, and it was way early in the conversation in the back of my mind, I don't want to lose it, is you talked about you have to be authentic. You have to be who you are. When did you settle on who you really are?
I can give you an example, but I think in order to settle on who you are, you've got to be at a place where you're willing to give up everything that you thought you were or that you wanted to be.
No wonder you
Okay.
gave me such a big sigh with that question. That's a huge, say that again.
So, in order to be who you are, right, you got to shed off all the skin or all the what are the knights where they used to wear the armor,
Yeah.
right, of who you want to be, essentially, or who you think you are. We have to go back and replay that again.
Yeah, but
For
that's really, but
Charlie
that
didn't
is,
send
no,
me
I get it.
any
What you're
pre-recorded
saying is to
questions.
become who
So,
you are, I've got to shed all the things I really thought I wanted to be. Because
yeah,
that's everybody influencing you, telling you who you should be. At some
yep,
point as a man or as a woman, you have to
yeah,
come to this is really who I am and I have to get comfortable in this skin
yeah.
because otherwise I live a life of being inauthentic, which means I have shallow relationships and
And
everything
let
else.
me tell you, everybody, especially today, has a strong BS meter. Okay.
Really?
I think. Look, I know talking to patient Coians, I've certainly felt um, everyone knows, when someone's trying to give you an answer that you want to hear, and if they don't, they're going to figure it out in short order because people aren't stupid. People aren't stupid. People are independent thinkers, and they have a lot. I mean, look, some people, if they're not there, they'll get there. But at some point in time, I think they'll realize that, and then, especially if you're a leader of an idea, a movement, a company, a department, a group, a family, whatever it may be, as soon as people realize that you're not who you say you really are, or that you've pull them down a path or based on something you wanted them to believe that wasn't really true, then you're in trouble. That's different from a vision.
Yeah, but it's also different. Before we go to vision, is to say we rarely say who we are. Okay, I always say that there's the Superman proclamation when he used to. This is the black and white movies I used to watch of Superman series. He would
I
say
didn't know they were
they would say he
black and
would
white.
show up and he would stand there like this, and
Yeah.
they'd say, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm Superman. I stand for truth,
Yeah.
justice, and the American way."
American way.
But we don't get that chance to tell people who we are. They just discern this person is genuine and this person isn't. Okay? What is it that they see, that you see in people that you say, this guy's for real? What I'm seeing is what I'm getting. I can trust this person, and then you give them that second chance. You don't trust them completely.
Yeah, I think it's someone who when I talk to them, look, everyone wants to talk to someone who knows their facts. That's fun. Oh, that's a smart person. They know their facts. But I think someone who's also willing to tell you what they don't know right? That goes against the American way. Hey, I'm Superman. I know the direction. I'll fly off in this direction. I know which way to go, right? And I do think a characteristic that's becoming more and more recognized and maybe even celebrated is being humble.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'll start there.
But how do you know? You talk to people who feint humility, right? In other words, they're good at looking humble.
Yeah.
I've seen that too, where I look and I go like, I'm like, oh, come on. It's like you saying, oh, we sold this company. And I say, well, congratulations on selling the company. You say, well, I really didn't do any of it. It's really my whole team. To me, that's a false humility statement. No, I did. I started it and doing that. But really, there's these people that God brought along with me, if you will. And we were in the right place at the right time. It's pretty amazing, That's
sure.
more.
But I also think
genuine.
They're authentic to doing the work. Okay. Because like when I interview someone, you're trying to figure out if they can get the job done. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And all you got to do is start asking them and digging deeper and deeper into how they did their last job and what worked and what did not. There's a lot of interviewing techniques, but basically you're trying to figure out if someone's authentic. Because everyone interviews well at a certain point. Right? Everybody could come in there and smile and say a few things and read a few quotes out of a book.
Everybody stands for truth, justice, and the American way.
Exactly. Right? Who doesn't come in and say that? Who doesn't come in and say, I don't? I stand for lies, injustice, and the North Korean
I believe
way.
in high productivity. I believe in giving my all to the job.
That's right.
The heck with the family. I'm here for you.
That's right. Oh, man. You know me. But you got to get someone that can really dissect a problem and speak to that. And that's why I would say everyone out here, you don't have to go start a company. Just start by finding a problem and owning it, owning the outcome, the risk around that outcome. That's just like being an entrepreneur, working that problem every single day, checking in with all your teammates, getting the data you need to make sure you're going along the right path, and pushing forward for the best possible outcome. But there's no substitute that doesn't go through that. It's hard work and lots of thinking.
What's the risk? What's the risk of working with somebody who's inauthentic? What risk did you experience? In other words, people who got by the screen, if you will, and you thought they were one thing, and then you found out, usually under pressure, right? They were quite another.
Well, let's be honest. What's the risk is you can get hurt by that. Okay. It goes all along the ways. I know we're focused on entrepreneurism, so you could have a co-founder that's, it's something you have to correct that. I started off saying, hey, decisions are easy if you can go back and reverse those. Some of them are harder because you get, into a certain path. But at the end of the day, what decision really isn't reversible? And so as long as
you're really taking it to a less emotional level and a more business type level is when you said something that really made it says it can hurt you. If I trust somebody because I think I really know who they are, and then they turn out to be somebody else, it really does. It hurts us. It hurts us.
Absolutely it does.
And then it starts questioning us. We start saying, am I not?
Why didn't I see that?
What did I do wrong here?
I think everyone here who's listening knows someone. Maybe they've been through this themselves. It's like a marriage that's broken up. Okay. Yeah. And you see that person or something happened, and you say, "Man, both people are hurt." Quite frankly. And maybe, sometimes every once in a while it may turn out to be, good for both sides. But in that rare moment,
it could be
when that's happening, and you have one side that look, there's a lot of raw emotions in those sort of things. But I'm using that as an example. I think that's something that everyone could relate to.
Yeah. You did something that's, I'm getting off, now get off that. I'll change track switch a little here, as my friend Wells calls it, is you've done something that I think is unusual, but it's proved to be successful, and it was successful in both. More successful certainly here than it was with BroadSource, But you walked into two vertical markets, neither of which that you had any experience in. And yet you built something in those vertical markets. And I just wrote something on that recently that talked about you really have to understand in a vertical market, you really have to understand it by having worked in it. Otherwise, it just takes time. How did you get successful in these? How did you come around as an entrepreneur to get to understand these vertical markets and how they work, how they buy, who's who, all that stuff? And how long does it take?
Well, the less experience, the longer it takes, because you might have less conviction around your decisions. I actually believe when you're a small company, people always say fail fast, all this sort of stuff, right? I believe you should make slower decisions, because if you make the wrong decision and it's not reversible, the boat capsizes and it goes over the waterfall. So I would rather personally be alive, stick around to build something great, and it took a little bit longer than make a rash decision that you didn't completely understand and fail. Now, that doesn't mean that you wait for 100% of the data points to come in, right? But maybe it's more than 40%.
Yeah.
You know? And
I like this idea. Don't go faster on these irreversible decisions. Go slower.
Go slower.
You never hear that. Never.
And I know that drove some people around me crazy sometimes, but I wanted to get the answer as right as possible, because that right answer opens up a whole new world of possibilities, right? We started off selling into small doctors. Then we went to medium-sized doctors. Then we went to small hospitals in South Georgia, teeny ones. Then we went to medium-sized hospitals. Then we went to hospitals that were medium that owned the doctors and the hospital. And then we went to large hospitals in 2017, in December of 2017, and never looked back. It took us from 2009 to 2017 to actually hit the perfect product market fit. And
wow.
Now, I did not have a career selling to large hospitals, nor selling to providers. But I didn't outsource it either. I didn't go hire immediately. And I felt like that there were a lot of no's in that process, but we learned all along the way. Also, because we had less amount of capital, we had to make sure the decisions we made were the right ones. So that I don't think that software is looking to solve a problem, but it's measured by how much value it delivers. And so everyone who builds great software, we always want to build the right product. That's a hard thing to do. So you got to measure the value in what you're solving for. And the way you got to do that is talk to people who might buy and understand the market as you evolve. And so when I think about, look, to your point, you said a second ago, I would love to invest in someone who's in the kitchen and sees a better dishwasher because they've had 10,000 rinses on the dishwasher and they know product market fit. But there's a lot of other things that go into success of a business too. We talk about these things like product market fit, but it does. And that means you can sell it, but it also means, you got to deliver it. You got to make sure it works. It has the right ROI. You got a happy customer. The happy customer can refer. There's a lot of iterative processes that you have to kind of feel like you do all at once, but you're doing a little bit each and every day.
And it's so painful to get through to those right answers. And it takes time. It's just painful.
Takes time. It just takes time.
Oh, I made it. I figured it all out. We'll do this. And this is the right pricing. And this is the right channel. And this is and it's not. It never is.
And it sounds good to sound like my example of dishwasher that knows everything. But the truth is, sometimes the more you know, the less you know, because this world's changing so fast. And so what you have to be as an entrepreneur is a person who can get to the knowledge of the information to help them make the right decision. I always felt like I was a good decision maker. I really had conviction that I wouldn't make the wrong decision. And I did make plenty of wrong decisions, but I still felt like
what's interesting, though, is what I heard you say is, another way to say it is, I'm not afraid as an entrepreneur. I need to have the gift of not being fearful of being wrong.
100%. That's what Derek Jeter also said in his letter to himself. We hear this a lot, and I do agree that don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the media today, we any little person that does any little thing wrong, we talk about that failure and all the things. It's embarrassing and all this.
But I've worked with I worked with entrepreneurs in the past, and I've done this myself as a board member on some of these startups. I just know I'm right. I know this is the way that we really need to go. But I still, as I say that, I remember when I walk away, I always go, really, Charlie? Are you right? How do you know
Yeah,
you're right? Well,
I know. What if you're wrong?
Yeah, right.
What if you're wrong? Everything's riding on this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have to say, well, I'm damn it going to make it right.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to go.
Right. But I do think you have to always be, Mike Hirsch was a part of our success at PatientCo for a couple of years. And he used to always said, look, everybody, we have flat sides. And so, we got to make sure we understand what those flat sides are to balance out everything and that we're not blinded in a decision. We're not blinded by a decision because we don't see it over here, right? Or we're not willing to look and see it because we have a flat side. And I think that's something, it comes back to being humble and like, I can always be wrong. I'm always looking for the next right data point. I'm always aggressively in a thirsty, hungry way pursuing that because it might depend on my next meal. Like you can't ever stop learning. And when you learn from those successes or failures, those are growth points. I know that all sounds like, let's go write a blog on that. But I mean, the biggest success around an entrepreneur is one who learns.
Yeah.
Learning. And then you translate that learning. Entrepreneurs build learning organizations, and learning organizations that share those learnings are growing organizations because you have people, once they've learned it, they can teach it. And when you teach it, then it starts to create this virtuous cycle.
What these entrepreneurs have, and what you said just a little bit earlier when we talked about these being successful in a vertical market, is you said, I didn't outsource it. I did it. I was in the market. I was the guy talking to him. You might not consider yourself even a sales guy. You're just, but
no, I do.
need to be the person talking to the market. Otherwise, and this is something I say, is you can't learn about a market through somebody who's talking to the market. You have to be, that's what makes you magical. You have to be there. You have to be talking to the
in
prospect.
the zone, listening, learning, taking notes, putting them back together, getting back out. The more conversations you have that are external, like a dying organization is the one that has the internal conversations all the time. A growing one is one that has the external conversations because that's where the buyer is.
Right. And this is, you go back to somebody like that when we're as an entrepreneur, that gives us that benefit of beating the big company because we have our pulse, we have our finger on the pulse of the market. Big companies don't. They get lost in all of this stuff.
In meetings. They get lost in meetings and everything else. Yeah.
I mean, I look at, I get surveys every time I fly Delta Airlines, they send me a survey, like, what did you think? Now you take Delta Airlines, if it was a startup, I would be getting a question. I would be getting a call from the CEO founder who says, what did you think of the last flight? Well, that feedback is a heck of a lot more valuable, that conversation, than any survey that I'm going to put together, right?
I think I also learn is just the real-time interaction in a conversation. You can't substitute.
You can't. I agree with that.
I mean, I think of just early PatientCo days being in Statesboro, Georgia, in front of Bullitt County, OBGYN, and talking to the practice manager, and she was tough, and she was giving it to me, right? I mean, it was hard, but that's golly, like you go back and you're like, man, I just think I just learned a whole lot. It wasn't any fun doing it, but I learned a whole lot.
Look, I'm going to turn the corner. We're getting to the end of our time. And I do have just a few more questions, and this has to do more with cash outs and next steps, okay? So first of all, what's it like to cash out? This is life-changing, a life-changing event financially, okay? It's not like BroadSource, which you said it gave me maybe a year of my next a year of income to cover my family for my next deal, right? This is big, so what's it like to cash out like this? I mean, I've never done anything like that. I've had my cash outs, but there's certainly nothing to this extent. So what's it like? What do you, I'll just leave it at that. What's it like?
I had someone call me that yesterday.
Yeah.
Exact question. And, I guess
it's the dream, so that's why people want to know. It's like, I'm going to work. My dream is this will happen. And if it does, what will it be like? So what's it like?
Well, I mean, I think there's like not this one sentence answer I can give you. There's several. Okay. First of all, it's not what I thought it would be.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, yeah, there is a day you're like, my God, we're closing. And so first of all,
well,
let me even back up.
You didn't think it was, I didn't think what.
Well, let me tell you the hardest part of that. The hardest part is you love the company. You're going along this path with your mission and vision. You've got this great product market fit. You're number one in your space. You've got great people in the business, and you got to call them up and say, hey, there's an 11:30 meeting. Everybody dial into the Zoom. And you basically tell them that life's about to change. Now, just like everything, there's a beginning and end and an end to everything. And I guess Apple,
that's Ecclesiastes 3.
Yeah.
There's a season
it's the
for
truth,
everything.
Though. Again, I'll go back to the truth. The one thing about every time I, sit down and study that, I'm like, man, there's a lot of truth in these pages. But that's the truth. That's an example. That's absolute. That's a fact. And you got to return capital to your investors. There's lots of ways to do that. And in any case,
but what you're saying, though, you're making something that's interesting, is to say, basically, I owned a company and didn't have a lot of money, and now I have a lot of money, but I don't own the company. The other piece of that is, now that I don't own the company, it's like I've just been stripped of purpose. Right? I knew what I was supposed to do every day. I knew we were all clear on this.
This is what carried me. No, I have not been stripped of purpose. Okay. I do feel like if I get into the world of PatientCo, we found and ran into someone who I believe now, right? Our mission could carry on a higher purpose. Our mission could carry on a higher purpose when we are aligned with Waystar. Okay? Because
you mean higher purpose or have more impact?
Yes, our impact suddenly goes from, as much as I felt like we were in the majors, we're in AAA. We're the best team in AAA. Now we're the best team on the majors, and we are winning. We can go truly change healthcare. Okay, that's not an exaggeration. We're doing things today that can put information in the palm of your hands that will allow you to stay well better, to use more healthcare, to afford it better. All the things around the financial journey that aren't solved for today.
You sound like a guy who cashed out for money and residual equity.
No, and look, I don't like to talk about that part either. I mean, I like to kind of be lower key on this, but. Now, and you process a lot too. You process and think about, okay, you go back to some of the originations of the business, like what is my calling, right? How do I fulfill that purpose? All that, because it hasn't changed. I hope no one would ever say it's changed me. And the reason is this, and this will sound kind of crazy. I don't think of that. I feel like I'm a steward of that capital. It's not my money. It's been allocated to me to find a good home to, whether it's help other people, grow businesses, bring together a community, other things of that nature. And so, where I am right now that's great, but that it should not change who I am and how I approach every single day.
But here's something that happens is now you get all this money. Okay. You sit there and you say, it's really not going to change me. But yet you come to a very high principle, which is great, which says I am a steward of this money. Well, now that I'm a steward of this bucket of cash, if you will, that stewardship comes with responsibilities you really didn't have before. And those responsibilities are going to move you into different directions that you never really walked in before. So change is going to happen. And your authenticity is going to be assailed again and tested again. Okay.
over and over and over and
Yeah.
over.
But you don't even
And
know yet because this is so new.
I don't. I'm still processing,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want that to be the talk track, by the way. I mean, you won't see a headline in the AJC or even in the Business Chronicle about PatientCo selling. And that's by design. It should be about PatientCo selling. I don't want anybody to see someone cashed out. I want to see a mission is being fulfilled. Customers are going to receive something different and better. Our health systems to help patients that through these things that we're really and I know people can sit there and say, well, that's a BS artist. He's just saying
No,
that.
I think that you did right.
No, that's the real truth.
If
That's the real truth. If you're motivated by the money as an entrepreneur, then you're not. It's like marrying for money. You're probably going to have a bad marriage.
Okay.
Right.
But I do think that, I'm asking you questions about you and you're making it more about PatientCo. And I think we can park PatientCo because once you build a company that sells for what you sold for, it's a real company. Okay. This isn't something that was a $5 million company, which could disappear within a big organization and never be found again. Okay. Yeah. You've made an impact. And now your purpose or mission for PatientCo is going to be carried out in a much bigger way with more impact. So I think PatientCo is good and healthy, and it was a great time because there is a beginning, there is an end, there is seasons, if you will.
Yep.
But now you are in a new season of your life as an entrepreneur. And
that's right.
And as a husband and as a father. Okay.
Yeah. And so how do you do that correctly, right?
But now you have different constraints. You have all of this and responsibilities. You've got all this cash. You've got this responsibility to the buyer.
You're making me blush. But, it's like, I mean, I get it. It's a different day. And I think you got to take the same things that got you here and figure out what your mission is and so forth. I know I'm going to be involved in healthcare technology. That is a passion that everyone knows that there's a lot of healthcare technology out there.
That's cool. So you fell in love with the healthcare technology side. That's interesting. Okay.
And I like payments. I like payments too. Okay. And I like Atlanta, right? I love Georgia Tech. Yeah. I love places like, there's a lot of things that help get me here, like, high tech ministries, right? So there's a lot of paths along the journey that, I got to kind of sit down and think about. But, I don't want it to. I do want it to be about a solution that is, I'm kind of rambling here as we end, but as you can tell, like, what's it like? I think some people think it's like you ever seen the Toyota commercial where you go, oh, what a feeling. It was an old commercial and the guy buys his car, he jumps in the air and clicks his heels. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That is not this. Now look, that is not this. Now look, we had a great celebratory party at PatientCo. That was awesome. We had a great closing dinner. That was pretty cool. We had several celebrations with Waystar as we were brought into the fold there. Those were fun. There's lots of events with people that are, I think about the people who are walking around Atlanta now that are millionaires. That's an awesome thing to think about, right? But and hopefully, employees that, you hear it say, right, you can buy a new car, you buy a new house or something maybe more life-changing. But that's not why we did the business. That was just a byproduct.
What's interesting to me is I remember when Richard and I, way back in October of 1981, we sold our company, okay?
Yep.
Which was, we got gross proceeds that were less than the transaction fees for your deal, okay?
The bankers won.
What happened to me that I remember back then is all these people that wouldn't give me the time of day, all of a sudden they're coming out of the woodwork. They want to meet with me.
Yeah.
And I was focused on, we were focused. I was young. I was in my late 20s at the time. And we were just trying to build a company. And I went from this build a company to, I have this money and all these people want to tell me what to do with it so that I can make more money. Okay. Or have a better life. And they had all these plans for me. I didn't know how to evaluate all that.
Well,
You must be
I
having
just
the
kind of
same
thought,
thing happen to you. People just showing up, that they're going to they're going to
look,
help you
I'm
build
not
your
retired.
future. Huh?
I am running an innovation department at Waystar with a lot of resources, and we were going to do some important things, and so that has allowed me to go
Ah,
put
okay.
the time that I could have open, right, into that bucket to continue to stay focused, and
But you can't
I
say
think
no
that's been helpful.
forever. You're going to have these opportunities come your way. And I'm not saying that means leaving Waystar. I'm not
No,
proposing that. But you just need to know that this is sort of coming your
oh,
way. And
and
you
I
got
take
to,
those
when do you
calls. I
say
think the
no and when
question
do you
is
say yes? Or when do you
exactly.
say, I'll think about it,
Exactly. You have to process through your head how you're evaluating things. It's no different than how you make a hire or not, how you advance something in a stage of a sales cycle. Like you got to start to have some reference points that allow you to make decisions more quickly and with conviction. Starts back with what we talked about, even starting a business. And so, I'm using this time to process and think through those and have very rich conversations with people like you and and start to build out that mission statement,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I'm
Um,
excited for you. I'll tell you that. I think that one of the things that I have learned, I was thinking about this just this morning, and I saw this with one of my sons who's Nick, who's sort of getting into
yeah,
his late 20s. It was
yeah,
interesting. He's done the roommate thing, and now the roommate has a girlfriend, and
yeah,
they're getting serious and all, and how that's affecting
yeah.
him. And I was thinking about, we all have to go. Every season in life that we go through ends, and we have to start a new season. And we fight like crazy to not have to deal with this new season that's coming because it's a big unknown.
Yeah.
Okay. I see that when I hit here I am in my late 60s thinking, what's this next season look like? I don't want to go there really. Okay. I like what I'm doing. I don't want to change, right? We want
We
to
don't
hold
like change
on.
as humans, and it's the one
Yeah.
constant in life.
But it is really, really exciting what you're going through. You're getting into your mid to
Look,
late 40s here. It's a new season, and
look,
it's
I
going
want
to
to come
be
up with as a
filled
family
with adventure.
our mission and vision. This sounds cheesy, like our values. Write them down, like really come up with those in a way that is something that we know, and that leads us down the path of where the next steps are. I've found very. I know people kind of roll their eyes at the mission and vision. I think it's very important, and then the values are also extremely important to a company. And why doesn't every family have a mission and vision statement and a set of values for their family?
Do you?
We're working on it.
It's a hard thing to do to get
It's a
to
hard thing to
because
do.
it truly is. If we're going to be one flesh between us and our spouse, is getting to a shared vision is hard
Yeah. And
because
look, it was hard at PatientCo. We spent a lot of time working on that. And you
yeah.
think it's just a couple of words? We spent a lot of time. It's those are hard things, and yet you just want to get out and sell another deal, but you
How do you
can't
get
do
to
that.
values?
How do we get to values?
Yeah, like even you and Anna, how do you say this is what we as a couple value?
Well, I think you go start like with a whiteboard. You write down the values that you think are important, and then you try to talk about why that's important. Right? Talk about why those values are important,
Yeah,
and then you can't have 20. You kind of got to decide, are we going to have 3 or 5 or 7, and
right.
you start narrowing them down, and you got to talk about why this comes off. I mean, it's part of the process.
It is. It is.
It's
But it
not
is like
calculated.
I've gotten to where people say, "What's your value statement?" and all that, or "What are your values?" It really comes down to like you and Anna, or me and Kathy saying, "What do we in fact value? What's important to us?" Okay. Because the world is telling you so many different things on what should be important, or it's coming in and trying to steal the things that are important from you.
Damn
And
straight.
but to write them down and then to start behaving consistently with those values is so important for as individuals, as couples, and also as companies. Very difficult.
But it creates alignment, allows you to have the guardrails up to say yes and no to say. It makes it so much easier.
Right.
And then, I think the next step is, okay, well, where are these values coming from? Right. And to dig deep
Why
into
is that
that.
important?
Well, I mean, I guess, are they your values or are they God's values? I mean,
or are they someone else's values, right?
Or are they someone else's values? That's, and this isn't like a far left or a far right type conversation here. It's just the reality. Where do some of these core values, come from?
And we're all different, as you said. We talked about, you said, well, with Steve Jobs, I don't know that it would want to be him. It's just because there's a mismatch in values. That's all that was. From a business standpoint, would you want to be him? Why not? But, the values, his values weren't your values. That's all. That's why you created your own company and your own value with your values.
And when his values aren't your own values, then you don't sit there and say, boy, I want to be Steve Jobs. You don't. You actually want to take some good things that he did and build them into a special sauce of your own business that is lots of other people's business that choose to work there every day too. And ultimately, it's like your customer's business too, if it's done the right way.
Well, I think that if we can sum up what's really important based on this conversation as an entrepreneur is to be authentic. Practice or behave in alignment with who you are, okay? And all the other stuff that you talked about, I like where you said, the 3 parts. I wrote a little article on this, but I had 5 steps. You had 3 steps, which really did it better, which is you're going to start a company. You really have to be a problem solver. So what are the problems that you see out there? I love the little black book that you talked about. And then you said, so will people actually pay me to solve the problem? And then will they pay me enough so that I can continue to make investment in solving even more of the same problem? And
if you do those 3 simple things,
and brilliant. Okay. That's so true.
Sky's the limit. Sky's the limit.
Sky is the limit, but it's not easy. It's still an everyday fight to get you to, what do? You said a fight to get you to the next, what was that? How did you put that?
Just survive in advance.
Survive
in advance. But the truth is, the last thing I'll leave everybody on is one of our core values at PatientCo is improve each and every day.
Yeah.
And if you are really focused on the things you're going to be improving each and every day, and you're getting better. I think that's why in our society we love underdogs. You look at a quarterback that wasn't good last year, and this year they're zipping it through the air. I mean, who doesn't like that person? And Austin Riley for the Braves, look at how much he's improved this year versus last year. It's amazing. We love those people like that. And so everybody has the opportunity to improve if they're authentic. If they're authentic and they really know where ground zero is and can build up for that. We still got a lot we could dig into that in the broad source, Charlie, that I didn't get to. But that is the key. And if you improve each and every day, and improvement on a next day improvement, suddenly it's like recurring revenue. It's ginormous. And then you are a force to be reckoned with, and you have conviction and confidence.
Popular business books over the last 2 years is Atomic Habits.
I haven't read it.
Just do a little bit every day, and it makes a massive difference over time.
100%.
But when you say you got to be better every day, as the founder, that's part of who you are. And when you say it, I'm looking for it as an employee to say, is that guy getting better every day? Is that bird Blitch practicing what he preaches? Otherwise, you're inauthentic, So we have to live our values, okay?
Yeah. And then you're going the opposite way. But in today's world, I believe people want authenticity. They want to be around leadership that talks about the good things and the bad things. They want it. That brings people together. It really does. And then you find people's talents and find ways to put them in a position to leverage those talents and win. And I mean, everyone loves winning, right? That is fun. When you're winning, oh my gosh, when you're on a great team that really works well together, that's a high trust, high performance team, and you got product market fit and things are selling and your customers love you. I mean, that is a wonderful place to be. And, that isn't a one-time thing. That can keep going on and on and on. That's why we read these books. That's why we listen to these type talks. That's why we want to learn from the best, is because that is a very attainable goal, especially when you're creating new markets, new revenues, the whole thing. And that's what's great about entrepreneurship in a nutshell.
Yeah. And what did you call it when, as an employee, would you call it flow, or what did you call it when in the zone?
In the zone.
And that's
Man.
what you described, the in the zone company. It's all working from the market on in. It's all working. And I'll tell you, I only experienced that once in my entire life. Everything else was just a day-to-day battle. But when it clicks and it's all coming together, oh, it's just, it's like,
it's magical.
It is.
And it's worth
amazing.
Every bit of hard work you put in to get there, because you're just going, and it is fantastic. Things are clicking. Board meetings are great. I mean, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, right. Every meeting starts with a cigar, doesn't end with a cigar.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's great. You can recruit better. You can retain better. You can pay more. All these things.
Yeah.
And life isn't perfect. There's always challenges every day, but that's the nut. That's the nut. Kind of everything wrapped up in a nice box.
Well, thanks for taking all of this time. I'm going to close us out here, and then if you would just hang on after I close this out, you and I will just close it out. But I'll stop it recording. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
Let me just close this out here. Wow, that was just fantastic. Getting into new.
Well, you have a lot of good ones. You have a lot of good ones. So
we did have a lot of good ones. But to my guests, thanks for joining me and Bird. This has been a great conversation. There's so much to learn from Bird, and I know so much about his background and his family and everything from Augusta. I mean, all that could have been covered, we didn't get to. But he's lived a great life. He had great people and great family in his life. He's got a great wife who stands behind him, and he's built great teams as he's gone forward. And the result is a great company, which is becoming even greater even after exit. So thanks for joining us. Again, please subscribe at paparelli.com. This has been a pleasure. Take care.